I did something bad yesterday.
What else is new?
Well, okay, here's the thing. You know, you're sitting at home, and I have to put a spoiler out there. I am not trying to poke fun in any sort of an ethnicity right here. I was just having a little bit of fun.
Okay.
Okay, because, you know, you get that call. Ring, 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 ring. Okay.
I've heard you do some accents.
Well, this was on a Sunday, Ted. Okay. No, it was on Family Day here in Ontario. When families, I got 2 cats. I live alone. Nobody likes me. But you know, if I had a family, I'd be sitting around with them on Family Day. You know, just kind of spending some quality family time together. But if the phone rings, ring, 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 ring. It's a Toronto number. Now I've got a couple of people in Toronto whose call I would gladly take.
Yeah.
And I answer the phone with bated breath, and lo and behold. Congratulations! You are eligible for a cruise. All expenses paid. Blah. Now, you've had this call.
Yeah, just press 9 for more information.
Absolutely. And what happens is they have you do a survey. Okay, it's 3 questions, the most ludicrous questions at all. And sometimes you get to go through to an agent. Other times they do a callback for you. So my option was, please stand by, and an agent will be happy to get you on your free cruise. Okay, so
yeah, I'm on pins and needles waiting to hear how this turned out.
So I'm like, I have to do this. You know. Now I have to warn anybody who comes into my life, a romantic partner and otherwise, that I am at heart a comedian, and I cannot turn it off. And you're going to hear stuff that you may or may not be on board with, but I can't help myself sometimes.
No one makes you laugh more than you.
Ring, 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 ring. Hello, my name is so and so. Thank you for calling. Can I have your name, please? Oh my God! It's my reaction when I said to him, "You'll never believe this. I am so excited. I have won a cruise. Can I have your number, please?" So, you've got my number. You've called me. Now listen, I am so terribly excited about this. I'm very, very glad that you're excited. I love cruises. I've always wanted to go on a cruise. I see cruises on television. I love trains. But I said to him, I love trains.
Yeah,
okay,
I got the joke.
I know. And but it continued from there, Ted. Okay,
How long did you string this out for?
Well, about 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Yeah, so we kept on going back and forth with telephone numbers and this and that and what have you. And then halfway through, as I'm making up a bogus name and this and that, first of all, they called me. They should know my number. Halfway through, Mr. Hyde becomes Dr. Jekyll.
Oh.
Or Dr. Jekyll becomes Mr. Hyde, because all of a sudden, it's my voice. And I explained to the gentleman that it's Family Day, and I understand that you're doing a job. Where are you based? Where's your call center based? Oh, we have locations all across, blah, blah. Okay, where are you actually based? And that's where things got a little bit hairier.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, suffice it to say, I was cordial with them. I did have a little bit of fun. But my God, this telemarketing, who actually falls for this stuff anymore?
I don't know.
It's like every so often you hear this stuff. And again, I don't mean to disparage any nationalities. I have many friends who are from both the Middle East and from Pakistan and from India. I've got people who I'm close with in all those areas, and it's funny. We all sit around and we joke about this. I mean, Canadians, my God, throw eggs at Canadians, I'm not trying to single out any sort of minority, but this is just how it went. The call, and it was there for comedic purposes. I mean, I was sitting here laughing my ass off personally, but
the truth of it is, the companies that still pursue this this type of marketing as an effective ploy, to me, it's just so outdated. It's so archaic.
Of course.
But my point is, before you move on, I've seen you in action on this thing, and when the caller begins to speak, when we talk about accents, right? It can be a variety of accents, and if it happens to land on a particular one that you can use, boom, you go into that.
Absolutely.
If it's French, you can do that. If it's something else, there's about 4 or 5 that I've seen in action. So it actually registers in accordance with the telemarketer himself.
A few years ago, actually this is going back about 14, 15 years, I used to get people, this is how juvenile I was in my late teens. I used to get a bunch of my friends on the phone. We'd do conference call. I'd call up 2 people, and then they'd call up 2 people, and we'd have like 8 people on the line listening to me doing this. And I would call up places. I called up a cake shop in Montreal because I was living in Montreal all the time, and it was one of the more recognized ones there.
Put on an Anglophone accent?
No. It was actually Italian run, and hey, you got a blah, 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 what can I do for you? And I started with an accent, of course, hello, yes, hello. I called because do you do birthday? Not birthday. You do birthday cake. You do like other special cake. I need wedding cake. Do you do wedding cake? Absolutely, we do wedding cake. What type of wedding cake? Like, oh, I like a normal wedding cake, wedding cake with layers, some icing, a little thicker men on the top of the cake for the people who get married. What type of meat do you put in your cake?
I figured breasts or penis would be mentioned at some point there.
There was that pause. I'm sorry, sir. What'd you say? What type of a meat do you put into your cake? Do you use beef, turkey, chicken, sausage? Anyway, this and this went on, right? And of course, we had all these people snick around the line. I love doing this. I love messing with people. I can't help myself.
Are you sure that you have this under control?
I don't know, Ted. Sometimes I think that there's something inside me that I cannot control. But, instead of like it being some kind of cool demon, I've got like Buddy Hackett or something. That's not cool. Let me tell you what else grinds my gears, Ted.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, last night. Last night. Okay, last night, I had been editing. I just showed you a scene before that I was editing. Spent the whole day and a fair chunk of the night editing. Okay, like 12 hours yesterday. That's not an exaggeration. You've taken video editing. You know how this stuff goes. Anyway, so I settled down. A fellow who's doing our music stopped by very, very briefly. I had to give him a disc and took a bit of a pause, just to relax and unwind. Did a little bit more editing, and then before I went to bed, I decided I was going to watch some special features on a Blu-ray. I needed to unwind. And put the Blu-ray in, starts up, everything's tickety-boo. Now, this is a disc from the UK, so being a disc from the UK, I have one of these all-region Blu-ray players, and those are difficult to find. It plays regions A, B, and C. Starts up, it's on the screen, I grab the remote control, and I'm trying to skip to the chapter or to the special feature that I want, and nothing's moving on the screen.
Oh, the battery must be dead.
Well, the battery must be dead, so I changed the batteries. And I changed the batteries again.
Oh no! Did you salvage the? You have the known quantity where you pull them from the remote that you've shown to work.
Yes.
From the television.
Yes.
And swap out to the.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then I thought, well, I'll just have to worry about this in the morning. Get a universal remote control or something, and I'll just skip through the chapters using the buttons that don't exist on the front of the player.
No?
Okay, I've got 4 buttons on the front of the player. Okay, I've got the power, I've got the eject, I've got the play, I've got the stop.
What else do you need? Actually, you can eliminate stop because eject really is effectively stop.
I'll tell you what else I need. I need the other buttons, Ted. I need the other buttons. Anyway, so here's the problem. Now, I've got this paperweight sitting here. I can't control it. I'm like, crap. I can't even watch the documentary on Hammer that I want to watch. This is a restoration of Dracula, Prince of Darkness recently. We'll talk about it at the end of the show. But anyway, I thought, this sucks. Well, at least I can get a universal remote tomorrow to take care of this. So I started to do some research. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you have to understand, I was already wired, and I was already moody, and I was strained, and I was tired because I've been 12 hours of editing. Well, it turns out the particular player that I have, first of all, the remote control dying issue is a known issue.
Oh.
With the Seiki, which stopped producing Blu-ray players for good reason.
It turns out they couldn't make the remote controls.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So what happened was Seiki's remote controls, they are known to die. Sometimes what the problem is that they're shipped with batteries, right? So when they arrive, they got batteries. It's a Japanese company, and they have the usual AAA batteries in the remote, right? You think it's the usual. Turns out that actually Japanese batteries are slightly different than North American batteries in that they have a longer male component.
I know all about that.
Right. So, a longer male component. So, what is recommended online is to take a pair of needle-nose tweezers and pull out,
that's what we're gonna
stretch out the coil. So here I am now. It's 1 a.m, Ted. You can imagine me. I've got a headache. I'm in a bad mood, but I want to watch my fucking documentary on Christopher Lee. So I'm pulling.
Let's cap this day off.
Absolutely. I'm pulling it. And what do? Snap that boy right off.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so at least I resign myself to the fact that I'm going to have to get a universal remote tomorrow. And because you know how these work, right? What happens is you have to put a code in to the control, and it's all set up. Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm just going to go online and I'm going to find out what the Seiki code is tomorrow if I can enter it. Well, it turns out that Seiki doesn't play by the universal remote control rules because they do not have a code available to make their machines, their Blu-ray players, work with universal controls. So, 2:00 in the morning now last night. Now, this is a work day. Okay, I work night, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm on Amazon Canada.
You weren't angry Amazoning.
I was angry Amazoning. Okay, I was hate shopping last night. Okay, yeah. I was hate shopping.
It takes you to dark places.
I have now purchased because there are certain priorities in life, Ted. You know, take the car, take the food, okay, but leave the fucking Blu-ray player, because this is what I'm sorry to swear, folks. I'm sorry. This is normally a very, but
the role of Ted will be played this week.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So the thing is, like, because I have a lot of UK Blu-rays, you can find an all-region DVD player relatively easily off the shelf, okay? But to find a region-free Blu-ray player, it's very difficult. So I was able to source one, and even set it up so that I have overnight delivery, because there are certain priorities in my life. And courtesy of the Amazon Prime free trial. Free trial. And lo and behold, it should be arriving tomorrow. Now, I hope that everything is tickety-boo. I hope that I just plug this thing in and it's good to go. But you could imagine it's funny. My priorities are all off. I can recognize this now. Some people, they're happy to have family and a house over their head. people in their life who love them. For me, the Blu-ray player died, and that was it. My world came to an end, and I had to take care of it right now. Like for a moment, Ted, I was so furious at 1 o'clock in the morning. I was going to go start knocking on doors in my condo for no other reason that I needed to talk to someone.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did you feel at any time that you had lost control of your mental faculty?
I lost control, baby. I was all over the place.
I'm going to try again. I've tried a few times to segue us into a topic, and I failed monumentally, but I'm going to do it this time, damn it. We're going to talk about insane asylums this week, and, I really did enjoy the diatribe there. Typically, whenever there's a rant session to be had, it's me going off about some random indiscretion that was done upon me. But you know what really does suck? Technology when it fails, man.
Yeah, technology when it fails.
Worse.
Well, listen, there's an old expression, being fit for bedlam, or take, he's gone to bedlam, which is an expression essentially meaning, well, he's crazy, or they've gone nuts around the bend. Bedlam, of course, being the infamous London hospital, Bedlam Royal Hospital,
right.
Which was actually Bethlehem Royal Hospital, but it's pronounced Bedlam, right? So, this is our segue into this program. We are going to be talking about asylums.
Lunatic asylums.
Are we allowed to use the term lunatic? Is that
I don't know, man. I mean, it's outdated, of course. It's psychiatric institutions now.
But asylums, why are old asylums scary? There's so many films that take place in or are about old asylums, and we're going to talk about the whys and some specific titles over the course of this particular program, and the way things are going, the way this week is going, the way the past 24 hours are going. I'm probably going to end up in one of these institutions in the very, very near future.
This might have been our longest preamble yet. This is good. I enjoyed that. I got to just sit back and listen. We're going to talk about, what the idea was? This came from a listener, and I want to credit this person, Colin. He wrote an email in and said, what would be a good subject for you guys to tackle just randomly? What about psychiatric hospitals and asylums in horror? That's something that could be fun to talk about. And, great idea. I mean, we absolutely have to credit that as a good idea.
That's an amazing idea. And, we've talked about this before, but now's the perfect forum. We're kind of fortunate. I don't know if fortunate's the right term. But in Kingston, Ontario, where we live, and Google it, folks, there actually is an old, unused psychiatric hospital, over 100 years old. It was built in the late 1800s, and it lies on a large piece of property down by the waterfront, near Kingston Penitentiary, which is the oldest penitentiary in Kingston, now closed. It's on the same plot of land where they built a new psychiatric hospital in the late 70s, early 80s. But this particular building, this giant brooding structure, several stories tall, stands on the waterfront, gated off, boarded up, but still occasionally accessed by urban explorers, urban adventurers who are gutsy enough to break into it. It is the creepiest place to be at night, because you can drive around and walk through the alleys there. And although they do have security that kind of patrols the area, it's very accessible. I've shot some movie stuff there before, and underneath the building, I've talked to people who have worked there during the summertime.
Yeah. I have a bit of an anecdote to share too.
Oh, excellent! Mm-hmm. There are stories of you hear these stories from people who work there over the college years, and there are tunnels actually underneath this hospital, some of which apparently run through to Kingston Penitentiary, just a ways away. What's your
escape access points for the Penn guards?
Right,
it was their retreat point. Like if there was a riot, as took place in the 70s, they constructed these tunnels for the guards and the staff to evacuate underground across the city. That's fascinating. We got some cool history here.
Wow.
But as far as the psych ward goes, we've talked a few times before about doing a podcast from the site.
Yeah.
We had some ideas, and I think we might just follow through on that at some point.
Absolutely, yeah.
But right adjacent to the psych hospital, which is, of course, closed down now, but when it was in operation, it was adjacent to a public park, Lake Ontario Park. And they had mini putts, they had kids' rides, they had an ice cream stand, they had all these wonderful things that you take the family to.
Yep.
Don't walk your dog in the water, though, because Lake Ontario water, man, bad news. But anyway, back in the day, we're going back in history now, but my girlfriend at the time manned the ice cream shop. A little stand.
Wow, nice.
Well, this stand was mere feet away from the barbed chain link fence that separated the grounds from the psych ward. And daily, the patients that, would wander the yard. I mean, it wasn't max security or anything like that, but patients that were free to roam made their way through that fence. Of course, there was weak access points that they could get through, and they'd find their way into Lake Ontario Park, and they'd come to the ice cream stand with their pants pissed all over the place. And
oh, my God.
Crazy people. They were legit crazy people. And she had some good stories. In particular, it strikes me as the common element was they often would have pissed their pants, and they're just walking around. But, that's the kind of place
that's Sunday,
we're dealing with here.
That's waking up Sunday morning for me,
in our backyard. Yeah. I once heard a story from a fellow that had done an internship, I guess you would call it, working at the psych ward. And a man who overdosed on some particular narcotic. I don't remember the drug itself, but it fried him. And whatever happened, it damaged the brain. And he was in there in a room, and what he did from morning till night was he stood there with his arms outstretched, stood there perfectly straight and rigid with his arms outstretched because he thought he was a tree.
Oh, my God. His brain
was telling him he was a tree, and this is what he did. Until the guys that work, the orderlies would come in, and they'd pick him up, and they lay him down on his bed, and he fed him intravenously. He did not move.
He thought he was a tree.
Anyway, psych wards and psychiatry. What works for me, and you know what? We have a bit of an approach here.
Yes.
I jotted down a list of titles, and we know lots of titles.
Sure.
Horror movies, genre movies. Otherwise, it's not just restricted to our genre, that focus on this environment, this setting.
Yeah, sure.
Why is that? Why is it so effective, Anthony?
Why is it so effective? I think it's the concept of tortured souls, tortured minds. A lot of the atrocities that we've heard about medical testing and experiments.
Oh, yeah.
There's also a lot of back even in recent history, Ted. There's so many examples or suggestions of people who were unfairly committed to asylums. Back in the days of Bedlam, there are all sorts of legends of women whose husbands wanted to be rid of them so they can be with their mistresses, having them committed to the asylum, or being committed to the asylum because of homosexuality or any number or depression or
poverty. It could be poverty.
Yeah. Or poverty. There's so many heinous acts that have been associated with those institutions, but also it's another form of imprisonment, isn't it? Or the idea of the corruption of one's being when the mind betrays itself. It turns in against us, and it's out of our control. There are so many reasons why we are terrified by the concepts of confinement in a psychiatric institution or the threat of madness. But let's face it, a lot of these institutions seem to be these glooming old structures that when finally because the whole face of that area of medicine has changed, where we're seeing
it's constantly changing.
It's constantly changing, and we're seeing integration into regular hospitals and to more comfortable housing and what have you. I think the days of the major institutions are becoming few and further between. Those structures that do remain, especially those old ones like the Kingston one here or Danvers State in New England, where several films have been shot over the years. Like Session 9.
I'd like to bring that up along the way here.
Yeah. But I mean, so many of these buildings that still exist, they're just perfect fodder for ghost stories.
Danvers, I understand, is largely demolished at this point.
Really?
Yeah, only within the last decade. It's been redeveloped. Sometime along the way in the past, we've had emails from a listener who toured the grounds. He had sent in some photos and shared them with us.
I remember that, yeah.
But I think that one is lost, but there are so many out there still. These decrepit and decaying institutions.
Yeah.
And why are they an effective setting and location and environment to tell some kind of a creepy story?
Because of all the suffering, I think, that transpired within those walls.
In two different ways for me. I mean, it's suffering internally and externally. I mean, there's the tortured mind is one thing to try to grapple and understand. But then these places so often were houses of horrors. Yeah. And the atrocities, like you said, these things coupled together, it's a nightmare on screen.
Yeah,
often.
Sure is. And when brought to the screen effectively, I hate to say it, but I love a good haunted asylum movie. I don't know about you. And every couple of years, we seem to get a fairly decent one that makes its way out. So where do you want to begin?
Well, anywhere really. I just have a few factoids I wanted to share. Psychiatry, psychology, and insanity. These are all things that are just of great interest to me.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah, well, obvious, yeah.
Anybody who's listened to our Christmas time episodes will understand the Ted snaps.
Well, listen, we've got a Blu-ray player story now on your books.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, serial killers. Serial killers is a subject that we've never really tackled. It's because I don't know how to approach it in the context of the podcast. It's difficult. But it's a subject matter that's fascinating to me. I find it endlessly interesting. Entertaining is certainly not the right word. But part of the reason why is because it incorporates this element of insanity. And how can you understand insanity? It's a very difficult thing. Often when you read the case studies of particular killers, right? There's either a singular incident or a repeated pattern of behavior over years that you can kind of maybe sit back and think, I wonder if that might have been what did it.
Like a catalyst.
Something, right? And you look at the case history, and then in other cases, there's nothing that does pop out as that is what led that person down this road. Yeah. So how does the mind work, man? Like, how does this stuff work?
We don't know, and that's the thing, is that it's still that great unknown.
That's it.
And as such, especially throughout the Victorian period and into the 60s and even into the 70s here in North America, there were constant attempts to refine treatments and experiment on new treatments and new ways by which to try and heal ailments of the mind.
Well, psychiatry is something that's a relatively new science and has been challenged, because it's a difficult thing to quantify. It's not black and white.
And the sad thing is, back in the day, there were no advocates for the insane, right?
Right.
So no advocates for the insane. So if somebody is wheeled out of their cell in the middle of the night and brought into a room and they're subjected to various degrees of electroshock therapy or injections of experimental meditation or ice pick lobotomies, which terrify me. Who's going to stand up for them? Who's going to say something? So yeah, I think we all have a natural fear of that, Ted. Because you're right, it represents suffering not only internally but externally as well.
Here's some of the notes I had just jotted down here tonight before coming over. I just wanted to start with the term lunacy. It comes from a Latin root.
Involving the moon?
Right. Luna, right?
Yeah.
Lunaticus is of the moon. So, of course, going back in centuries ago, madness would be perceived simply as some kind of superstitious who knows what it could be, right? It could
That's
be possession
right, yeah.
by the devil, for crying out loud. We don't know. And I'm sure that there was, the idea of institutionalizing and cordoning off those that exhibit these psychiatric issues up to roughly the 1800s, that was something that was done very privately. It was a family matter.
That's right.
There was cases where the churches would house them in their parishes, but they'd be sequestered away, kept out of the light. It was in the 1800s where the concept of institutioning patients came about. And I read an interesting factoid where, going to Wikipedia, where it talks about the history of psych hospitals.
I love Wikipedia.
It's got everything.
And if it's on Wikipedia, it must be true.
In England, so using England as an example, at the beginning of the 19th century, there was perhaps a few thousand quote-unquote lunatics. And they were housed in these various locations. But by the year 1900, they estimate that figure had grown to over 100,000.
Whoa.
So once they had figured out the idea of, okay, let's have these centralized locations, and anybody that's exhibiting mental disorders, well, we'll dump them in there. And of course, your number balloons, right? Because now you've got a place to put people.
Yes.
And so over the course of a century, the population of identified mentally ill, explodes. But the problem is, they didn't have any clue on how to treat people with these issues. All they could do is just put them together in one spot.
That's right.
Institutionalizing.
And what a terrifying concept. Now let's go back to Bedlam. Now,
okay, that's going way back.
Sure, that is going way back. But Bedlam was still in existence into the 20th century, was it not?
I believe it's still operating in some capacity today.
And based on, I don't think it's not BBC, is it? Is Bedlam? I think, is Bedlam a BBC series, or is it an ITV? I think it's ITV, isn't it?
I don't know, but there's a movie, a Boris Karloff movie by that.
There is a Boris Karloff film. But there's also we've had season 1, and I don't think they've made a second season of a British show called Bedlam. And the idea is that the building itself has been acquired by a land developer, and they've turned the building, they've gutted it and turned it into a series of apartments, condominium style. And there's these different ghost stories that transpire. And I've talked about it on the show before, going back a couple of years. Decent little show. But I to be honest, I'd love to read a book about Bedlam, the history of Bedlam, because it figures so prominently into literature throughout the 1800s and again into the early 1900s. Sweeney Todd, there's references to Bedlam. In Christmas Carol, there's references to Bedlam. Sherlock Holmes, all the great. But it was a real place. It was a real place, and the horrors that occurred within the walls of Bedlam are unspeakable.
Right. Okay. I'm going to throw out a few more factoids to stop me if this becomes boring. But I found it of interest. In the 1850s and 1860s in the U.S., the idea was that there was a format developed. There's a whole history behind it, but the format was developed for constructing these institutions, and it was called the Kirkbride Plan. The Kirkbride Plan was a uniform kind of similarity in the buildings. So it would be like this almost like lengthy rectangle, but divided into segments that sort of staggered. And the idea is that each length of hallway would have light and access of brightness and all this. It was supposed to generate a positive mood and all this nonsense.
Thus all the windows.
But what the secondary effect of this design, though, is that all these buildings have got these gigantic, ominous fascias. Like the fronts of them are these enormous Gothic style constructions. And so when you think of the psych ward hospital, the decaying psych hospital, I just picture this like imposing wall of design that's crumbling, and it just feels evil.
Yeah, precisely. And the windows, of course. There's always windows, so many windows, and you have to wonder as you're peering up at these windows, what's peering from behind, looking right back at you. Right?
Well, okay, so
I mean, think of that story about the fellow who thought he was a tree. I mean, how freaky would it be? You're a guard, you're looking, you're a night watchman, say, in this old institution, the building's empty, and you walk by a door, and just through the corner of your eye, you think you see a figure in the room with its arms outstretched, just standing there, motionless. I mean, think about that. That's a great story.
I mean, if you spent a few months working on that in that kind of a location, the things you'd see, right? Because so much strange behavior in one place.
Yes, yes.
We have this uniform, quote-unquote, normal behavior. There is no such thing as normal, but we have this idea that there's a social contract we all follow, and we act like normal civilized human beings. But you remove that and give a person free rein to let their delusions or fantasies play out. Well, who knows what you'll see? Who knows what kind of behaviors you'll witness?
You might even find podcasters.
Yeah. One last thing here. In the 60s, I just wanted to make note here that it was JFK that he basically set up this strategy to manage discharges from. He wanted to deinstitutionalize.
Right.
So this was the end of that kind of era, or the beginning of the end, where instead of just mass housing, now we're going to disperse them to treatment centers. We're going to try and manage this a little bit more appropriately.
Humanely.
Except that they didn't really follow through on the managing end. And studies followed that 33% or thereabouts, a third of all homeless people, had already been diagnosed with some sort of mental disorder. And 14 to 15% of inmates had all been already diagnosed. So the point is, they're flowing out of these institutions and they're going back into public society. They're still damaged. They're still not treated. They still don't have the kind of either pharmaceutical treatments or the talking cure. Let me just follow through on this a little bit. Sir Anthony, this is an area that I know a little bit about, but I won't dwell on it. I just want to say...
No, I'm fascinated. Please continue.
Psychiatry, it's an evolving science, and it's had its ups and downs. You think about films that we watch from the era of, say, the 40s.
Yes.
And how often do we have... this is following, the great works of Freud and Jung and other psychoanalysts. And suddenly psychiatry had exploded as this new science that we were all... The potential to be able to understand and manipulate the brain. Why, Professor So-and-so, with his round glasses...
and pipe.
Would espouse the narrative and the exposition on screen, as we would all bear witness.
His brain is not like the average brain.
You got it.
Men like you and me have frontal lobes, which are... Yeah, I know.
That is precisely it. And then, of course, over time, we found, you can't just wave a magic wand or... wiggle around a toothpick in the brain, in the frontal lobe, and magically cure a person. There's more to it than that. So there was a bit of backlash to it. There's the idea that anti-psychiatry, or psychiatry as sham, gave rise in the 60s and 70s. There was a backlash. And it's come back now because, thanks in large part to pharmaceutical treatments, we now are making greater progress. But I just wanted to say this. Here's why it's so difficult. When you think about the history of mentally disturbed people, going back to the Middle Ages and beyond, how would people have handled these issues? There's two things going on. There's three. There's three things. Biochemical and physiological factors. So we're all made up of chemicals.
Yes.
And when those chemicals get out of balance, it disturbs the way we think and behave.
That's right, of course.
So, biological issues. Add to that external elements, such as the physical world around you, the cultural influences upon you, and the interpersonal relationships. All those external things are now piled on top of your biochemical balance. Mm-hmm. One more layer, the internal. Your brain has got to organize and manage all of your individual hopes, fears, desires, fantasies, and feelings, and all these things are shaped by every interaction you have through the course of your life to develop the person you are. So, when something fritzes, who the hell knows where it is in all of this to figure out what has caused the problem? Why is this person now ramming his head into the wall until his skull is bleeding? Like, why is he behaving this way? Why is he lashing out at the people around him that love him? Or her. Why is this person behaving in this irrational way? Bipolar attitudes and activities largely caused by chemical imbalances versus a person was touched when they were too young in an inappropriate place. There's a multitude of things that can cause your behaviors and shape who you are. So psychiatry, man, tough business. They still don't really have it worked out. You can imagine going back to 1842 when you're in Bedlam and there's all these people walking around straitjacketed and laying on cold stone floors or shackled to the walls.
Shackled to the walls,
because
that's right, yeah.
People that are just essentially guards, they don't know how to treat these people. Simply all they're doing is cleaning up their shit, giving them food, and waiting it out.
Waiting for them to die.
So that's psychiatry in a nutshell. Here's some treatments that we've run across.
Okay.
The talking cure. This is going back to psychoanalysis, the idea of laying down on the couch and let's talk. Let's see if we can talk it out. If you continue to talk and share and explore, maybe you'll come upon the epiphany, the turning point, the talking cure. Whether you're into that or not, that's very subjective. It honestly is.
Sure it is.
Okay, psychiatric confinement. That's what we're going to deal with a lot in the movies we see.
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah, sure it is.
Medication is now a common treatment, the pharmaceutical treatment, the antipsychotics. The drug cocktail that will suppress the schizophrenia.
But at what cost?
Well, and its effectiveness is low, too. It's not a magic bullet. Electroconvulsive therapy.
That scares the hell out of me.
Do you know it's still in practice?
Of course it is. And quite effective for some people, apparently. Actually, there are some people who are grateful for having received the treatment. I understand this. I can't understand... It's difficult to proclaim to understand any sort of mental illness and the hell that not only the people who... The people who suffer from mental illness are the folks who suffer the most, obviously. And it's impossible to understand unless you're actually living in their shoes. The depths of their own suffering. And if one of these procedures, such as the electroshock therapy, brings peace from that... I remember talking with a lady once, actually, a client of mine in a job who had gone through the process, electroshock therapy. She suffered terrible depression and was treated twice in her life, and both times she was grateful for it because it helped. It helped set her chemicals or set her charges or what have you. I don't understand the nature nor proclaim to, but she was grateful for having received the treatment because she was convinced that it helped alleviate her symptoms. So, we're not going to sit here and throw barbs at this, but also the concept of the treatment itself is a terrifying one.
It is, and we've seen it on screen. To great effect many times, right? I mean, even in the schmaltzy kind of kitschy 80s horror that we've seen people fried with the electroshock multiple times. I mean, it's the killer's implement of choice often. But also, you think about films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where it was actually applied in its clinical setting, and it's still horrific.
Yeah. Oh God, is it ever?
So, I mean, it's a numbing process. It gives you kind of like a mild amnesia. It sort of, I guess, erases and numbs whatever is bouncing around upstairs. And I don't know. I mean, studies upon studies have been done. And the threat is that it causes more damage than the peace it brings. Mm. So why are we still doing this? Anyway, lobotomy. Oh, boy, the lobotomy.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
This one was introduced in 1935, and it was a process that was... in use for 2 decades, and there was one year in particular, I forget which year, somewhere in those 2 decades, 20,000 lobotomies performed in the U.S. alone in 1 year.
I think of 2 films. I think of Shutter Island, and I think of Sucker Punch, actually.
Yeah.
For alarming depictions of ice pick lobotomies, frontal lobe lobotomies. Mm-hmm. Oh God. Ugh.
Yeah, and I mean, We all have a general idea of what that was about, drilling into the skull, the trepanning process. I mean, that's also going back to prior to the lobotomy was the idea of drilling a hole into your skull to alleviate the pressure or whatever was causing. Oh man, it's so archaic.
I know.
I believe it was Bones that said in Star Trek V. It's like they're still using stone tools, Jim. Anyways, lobotomies. Man, that's ugly business there. Just going in and fishing around, cutting out a piece of lobe, and he's at peace. Dumb luck. I mean, that part of the brain is controlling something, so you carve out a hunk of it, and you're going to affect the behavior.
Yeah, you sure are.
But it's certainly not. There's no finesse there.
No.
So, lobotomy is kind of, it's gone its own way. Eugenics is the ugliest, I think, of them all.
Eugenics. Now, what's eugenics, Ted?
Simply put, it's the idea of kind of mitigating the issue through either aggressive surgery techniques or sterilization. And this is where, I mean, let's just point to the Nazis. You know, the Nazis did all the bad things, but, you know, they sterilized, they murdered, they basically euthanized thousands and thousands of institutionalized patients because that's their eugenics plan. There was a doctor, and I think we'll get to it on the list here at some point, who came up with the idea that he matched up syphilis with bodily symptoms, your mental disorder with the bodily symptoms of syphilis. So he saw that, people with syphilis they were also mentally deranged. Of course, syphilis, without going into all the medical textbooks, causes issues, mental issues.
Yeah.
When it gets into the later phase. He saw that as cause and effect, so he figured, well, if I sever off affected areas, well, I'll cure the mental ailment.
My God.
That's eugenics.
Wow.
Ugly stuff.
Wow.
So this is kind of a lot of the stuff that we've seen presented to us in the horror genre.
Yes, we sure have, Ted. And like I said, every year or every couple of years, it seems that we're presented with another film that there's been this pattern of ghost hunting television programs going into. That's a really creepy picture right there of ghost hunting programs, paranormal activity style, going into these institutions and encountering, ghoulies and ghastlies. I'm going to point to the Grave Encounters films, which I've enjoyed, very much so. Part 1 and Part 2 especially, I thought was quite effective. Now, do we know which institution they're?
I don't know offhand.
Sure, and we won't even get into that. That's fine. But that's a perfect example of where it works, and a film that really plays up the atmosphere of the facility in which they're shooting. And I actually think they must be shooting in a real.
Well, the exterior is certainly, yeah. I just don't know which they're using. I mean, if you want to use the idea of setting your location on site. You mentioned Denver's, and Session 9 is filmed on site before it was demolished. And man, talk about set dressing. That film, it just oozes discomfort just because of the backdrop.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't think there was much set dressing actually occurring.
Not required.
No, not required at all. In fact, I think it was a fairly lower budget affair.
It's just the idea of the peeling paint, the rusted equipment that's been left behind. And I mean, the idea of looking at these photographs, I mean, you referenced here, I actually have it on the screen. It's a gurney, it looks like. And it's just this old, antiquated piece of equipment that's been left behind, and these things, we see photos of the abandoned hospitals and the abandoned equipment. Well, part of the reason why it wasn't salvaged is because it was outdated when they closed the place down. So it had no value or use. And so over the decades, it's just decayed even more. And now it's at this lovely place where you take a picture of it today.
Yeah.
And now it's just this super creepy thing.
It sends chills down your spine, yes.
Like, there's nothing that I can envision more creepy than an abandoned wheelchair. An antiquated abandoned wheelchair.
Don't listen, I live alone, man. Don't tell me this stuff.
In the hallway of some dank building where the paint is peeling and the pipes are exposed.
Never mind. What if you wake
Was that a shadow that just moved?
What if you wake up to it in your bedroom?
Oh, man.
Yeah, think of that.
Wheelchair. I mean, the really old, archaic ones with the rusted hinges for the footholds. And
Listen, total changeling style.
You got it.
Yes, sir.
Well, I don't know. What do you want to do? Do you want to talk about some movies, or you want to go through a few genuine abandoned asylums?
Well, yeah, we're going to have a link to this on the webpage. This is an article online called 6 Abandoned Asylums with Genuinely Creepy Backstories. Do we want to credit the website?
Yeah, it's IO9. It's one of my favorite sites.
IO9, that's a great site.
It's a good... We won't read through all of these, but there's a couple bite-sized anecdotes that I thought would be fun to share, okay?
Okay.
The first one on their list is the Metropolitan State Hospital. It's in Waltham, Massachusetts.
Okay,
so it was opened up in 1930. It has a lot of little factoids about it, but this is the one that I thought was good. There's a macabre tale.
Is this the one that's actually used in Grave Encounters?
Well, Anthony, I don't know.
They all come with the same, don't they? Yeah.
So the macabre tale for which Metropolitan is best known earned its nickname The Hospital of Seven Teeth. Oh, I love that.
All right.
That's a movie title. In 1978, a patient named Anna Marie Davy went for a walk around the grounds, never returned. In 1980, it was found that her killer, a fellow patient named Melvin Wilson, brought police to 3 separate graves where he had buried parts of her hacked up body. So, patient on the grounds goes missing. Another patient chopped her up.
Wow.
Some years later, he's showing the police where he's buried them. But as if dismembering her wasn't enough, Wilson kept 7 of Davy's teeth as a souvenir.
Oh, that's just messed up.
Lovely. Let's see here. Look, there's lots of great photos.
An old piano. Oh, look at that. Oh,
abandoned piano,
gosh.
man. Holy crap. That's crazy. Danvers State Hospital.
That's the big one.
It's the inspiration for H.P. Lovecraft's Arkham Sanatorium. I don't know what you want to say about this. I mean, there's it is the backdrop of Session 9, so you get lots of great visuals of it in that film.
And are we sure that it's actually closed now? Because I know as of a few years ago, they were still offering like tours of the grounds, and they even did like a ghost walk on it, because it's very near Salem.
Portions of the hospital were shuttered starting in 1969. Most of it closed by 1985. The entire campus shut down in 1992. For years it sat empty, but eventually the property was bought by Avalon Bay Development, which demolished most of the buildings, including the interior of the historic Kirkbride building, which is that layout that I described there.
Okay, now, by the way, I'm looking here online. Grave Encounters, okay? It was a Canadian-American supernatural film, and it was filmed at Riverview Hospital in Coquitlam, British Columbia. That's a Canadian.
Oh, yeah.
It's a Canadian. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a few Canadian ones here, too. The Trenton State Hospital is the New Jersey State Lunatic Asylum. Founded on the Kirkbride plan, so
Okay.
it's following these. Look at that hallway, Anthony. I hate to talk about visuals on the podcast.
Well, we're going to have the link.
Man.
You have to see it.
Check it out.
Wow, that's horrific.
Yeah, it's like Danvers State. It's best remembered for its medical abuses than for its well-intentioned beginnings. Oh, this is Dr. Henry Cotton. This is the guy I talked about who had the crazy ideas. He became the director of this hospital in 1907. And he instituted treatments based on his own theories
Oh, dear.
of mental illness. He was well trained. He had a progressive attitude, yada, yada, yada. But he developed this dangerous theory about mental illness, one that turned his hospital into a house of horrors. I'm just going to read this last paragraph. And
please do. I just saw one line there that made the hair on my neck to stand up on end. Sorry,
After it was confirmed in 1913 that the spirochetes that causes syphilis to cause the disease's psychiatric symptoms, as we talked about, Cotton began to suspect that all mental illness was caused by bodily infections, and that the only way to cure a patient was to remove the offending infection. In 1917, he began removing patients' teeth, even in cases where x-rays showed no evidence of infection. Pulled teeth. To fix their minds. He soon moved on to other body parts: gallbladders, stomachs, ovaries, testicles, tracts of colon. That's lengths of colon for the uninitiated.
Oh my god.
Oh man, uteruses.
Is it uteruses or uteri?
Cotton claimed a cure rate of 85%, but in reality his surgeries had an unconscionably high mortality rate. He did not obtain consent from patients or family members, and in fact sometimes performed these removals despite their protests.
Wow.
So there you go. There's plenty more in the list, and lots of great photos.
Oh my gosh.
There's an abandoned cell, I guess, or room, and the bed is like rotted, and the paint is just peeled. Look at chunks of the
like
brick
a little
wall
girl's dress or
exposed.
something on it, or what?
There's a piece of clothing that's been left
my
behind.
God.
Oh my god! It's the things that nightmares are made of.
Look at that.
There's a wheelchair abandoned in the hallway. So there's plenty more. Not to go through them all, but yeah, man. Crazy. Asylums are scary places, especially the abandoned ones.
There's another article here that that you just pulled up. I think we should actually credit this too. 10 horrifying hospitals that you never want to stay in. What site's this on, Ted?
Okay, this is Listverse.
Yeah, Listverse. We love Listverse here.
Horrifying hospitals, but of course, it's focused primarily on sanitariums.
I love it's the Tranquil Sanatorium of Canada.
Yeah, okay. I'll just mention a couple here. I don't want to go through a bunch of lists, but in the Royal Hope Hospital in Florida, there's a whole great story here that basically goes all the way down to a ancient Indian burial ground under the grounds.
Nice.
Yeah, we're talking about a real life example of the famous horror movie trope. So here's an example. It's one of the most haunted places in all of Florida.
You have to do this like Fred Gwynn now, though, from Pet Sematary.
Okay.
You know. That's right. We put our crazy people out there back on top of the old Micmac burial ground.
In the surgeon's office, there's been reports.
I was much less scary in the monsters.
Equipment shaking on its own. Visitors say the beds have actually jumped and knocked at their legs as they walk by.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So but I just wanted to mention here the Tranquil Sanatorium.
Tranquil Sanatorium.
Located in Kamloops Lake, British Columbia. Is that the one that you looked up?
No, Riverview.
Okay, so there's two creepy sanatoriums in BC, in Kamloops. Anyway, yeah, why is this one bad? Okay. Over the years, there's been reports of mysterious floating orbs throughout the facility. Inexplicable feelings of, here's the key, the orbs are, they're film effects. Okay, orbs. But the inexplicable feelings of sadness, unease, and sudden drops in temperature. The trifecta, right?
Ah, yes.
There's also been reports of mysterious voices and spectral figures.
That'll do it.
Including that of a nurse who was allegedly murdered by a patient. Man, this has got all the ingredients.
Oh.
Knockton Hall Hospital in England. I mean, stories abound of a ghost haunting the grounds, a sobbing spirit of a young girl whose presence has been reported by various people who stayed in the building. She's said to haunt one specific bedroom more than others. And numerous people have claimed that they've been woken up at exactly 4:30 in the morning to see the spectral girl standing at the foot of the bed, crying.
Okay, see that's creepy, Ted.
Yeah.
I'm going to reference a film that you probably aren't a big fan of, but I enjoy it for what it is. Gothica.
Oh yeah. So okay.
Gothica is interesting because what we have is we have a haunted asylum that's still in use as an asylum, and the concept of somebody who's been imprisoned in a cell who's already got psychological issues and subjecting them to a very vicious haunting, I thought was a very, very unsettling idea.
So Gothica, I'm not a big fan of. I do appreciate the setting, of course, and the concept, but when it came to coming up with movies, because we talk about movies a lot.
Yeah, I have a favorite.
You do?
I do.
Okay, I think I do too, but man, this is tough business because you know how many
come on, I know.
films have been set in this location,
and not only horror films. I'm going to reference Marat Sade, which is about the staging of a play, the execution of Marat, as written and performed by the Marquis of Sade whilst imprisoned at You've seen this?
No, but I understand what you're talking about.
Oh my God, crazy, based on a stage play. So I mean that's a fine example. Another interesting piece, actually also involving the Marquis of Sade, is Quill, starring Geoffrey Rush and Kate Winslet, which I highly recommend. Brilliant film. One of the best non-horror asylum films if you're interested. But yeah, I mean the horror genre itself is so rich. What's your favorite?
Oh,
you said you've got a favorite title.
Well, it's down to a few. That's a tough one.
I have one. I have many that I enjoy, but you want me to?
Yeah, I'll throw it out. Session 9 might be my favorite.
Oh, of course, and I mean I know you love that film, and I revisited it in the last couple of months, and it certainly is effective. But Ted, I got a soft spot for the remake of The House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah, and I had that as a title here.
That's a damn fun. Right. If you're gonna go, and I mean, how horrific is this? Right. We're looking at a fun time in a haunted asylum. But I mean, if you're looking for that escapism, that roller coaster ride, the House on Haunted Hill remake. Do you think that's an unfairly maligned film? Because
well, I don't know about that. I malign it myself quite a bit. So.
Oh, okay. I enjoy it. I've always enjoyed it. That was the film that prompted me to buy my first DVD player because when it was released, when it was released back in 1998, 1999. Yeah, it was 2000, I think, actually.
Well, honestly, I don't think I've revisited it since then.
I enjoy it.
I'm going off memory.
I saw it 5 times in theaters. It was playing at a repertory theater. You could see it for $2.50.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Like an 11 o'clock show, and I used to take people out to see this thing because I loved it. I thought it was fun. I really loved Jeffrey Rush's performance. Although he says, "Oh no, I wasn't channeling Vincent Price." Come on.
Oh yeah. Come
on.
Hold on a second.
Come on. Of course you are. You might not have been, but you were directed that way. Anyway, I think it's very atmospheric, really creepy, good story, and if you're going to remake a classic like The House on Haunted Hill, I thought, they kind of did it right.
Well, there's room for levity in that story, so
the sequel sucks.
Yeah, no comment. I sort of cheesed out there. I said Session 9, and we've mentioned it a few times, but the truth of it is, when it comes to this particular subject, this idea of this location, man, Session 9 does it right. I mean, it's got all the creepiness. It actually uses the location as its own character in the way that it's sort of affecting the behavior of other characters. It sort of underhandedly delivers the idea of story elements. I don't want to spoil, so I'm trying to be careful. It introduces the idea of perhaps a supernatural threat where you're left kind of trying to assess whether you're just reading it wrong or...
That's right, yeah.
And that's the idea, that if you're walking around this location in person... And the time of day is right. The shadows are falling in the right way, and the paint is peeling. That peeling paint always works. And you stub your foot on that rusted piece of equipment, that gurney table.
Yeah.
And you think you hear the scurry of rat feet somewhere off in the distance. And you can't trust your eyes. You can't be sure that wasn't a shadow that moved at the end of the hallway. Right. And that's what Session 9 does. So I think it's really good. I've got a list here. No need to stop on any of these.
Okay, sure. But, all 500 that you have down here.
The problem is, and there's so many.
Okay, you know what? It's alarming, Dad. I just have to point out that this list that you've compiled was off the top of your head.
Well, kind of, yeah. When I start,
a fair amount of these are just off the top of your head. You're not using reference material. This is your life experience,
it's
Ted.
Pathetic, is what it is. But the very first one is Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Of course, yeah, I agree.
It's key. It's a key one in this particular subgenre, I'd say. And done well, I'd say, too.
Actually, it's funny. Barry Ewan, who's been on the program before, Barry Ewan sent me an email this morning saying that over the course of the weekend, he had revisited Nightmare on Elm Street 3 for the first time in many years. And he said, yeah, you got the 80s wardrobe and the hairstyles, and it's tacky, but man, is that the funnest of the movies.
It's really good.
It is.
It is a good one. And the idea of being set in the mental ward really does... I think that it really does assist with the Freddy Krueger storytelling, because these kids are trying to relay the information.
Yeah.
And of course, from the perspective of the orderlies and the doctors, they're not reliable narrators.
Well, they're just crazy.
They're just crazy, and we're going to drug them.
Yeah.
And of course, they're not just combating Freddy, but they're also trying to remain conscious while forever being doped. But that's the mechanism they use. Yeah. So just dope them up with Thorazine. We'll take care of this business. And that's another trope of this subgenre too, Anthony, is the idea of how often do we see the patient spit those pills out?
That's right. Yes, that's right.
We've got a pillowcase, a stuffed doll, or some particular location where those pills are accumulating.
Absolutely.
Sarah Connor did it. She had the right idea too.
Come with me if you want to leave. Sorry, you can't say Sarah Connor without delivering that line, right?
Yes, so, I hear that there's a new Terminator movie coming.
And
Arnold is involved.
Yeah.
How does that work?
I don't know, but you're going to be there.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah.
When it comes to movies featuring robots from the 80s, it turns out I'll be there.
Yes, you will.
So, a few thoughts about that in a minute.
Yes.
Shutter Island.
Oh, yeah, Leo DiCaprio at his finest, Martin Scorsese film.
Did this pole vault toward the top of movies you regard?
Yeah, very much so. It's a really good asylum film. A film noir in many ways. Not really a supernatural film per se, although it's got those elements to it. But certainly very effective.
Yeah, quite good. I need to rewatch that too. My disappointment with it simply was that the plot did not make a zig when I expected it to. You know what I mean? When you're talking about zigs and zags and turns and twists, and you're trying to predict, and you're trying to be smarter than the movie, I found myself falling down there because I thought, okay, I guess I just outthought this because the movie's actually simpler than I was thinking it would be.
And that's okay.
But the truth of it is, it's a good story nonetheless. So.
Oh yeah, it sure is.
Yeah, haunting closing shot. The backdrop is used well. When you're talking about old abandoned parts of hospital, and this one's a period piece too.
Sure is.
Great cast.
Leo's a fine actor.
Sure is. Okay, 12 Monkeys now.
Ah, yes, the Terry Gilliam film.
We don't spend a ton of time in the surroundings, but when we're there, it's gold. And maybe one of my favorite mental patients on screen ever is Mr. Brad Pitt. I mean,
that's right.
He's so quirky and funny, but yet he has a key. He's a key player.
Yeah,
in this
he
story.
sure is. Yeah, he's very effective in this film.
Good stuff. Okay. Well, you know what movie I just watched?
The Dead Pit.
The Dead Pit. Just watched it yesterday.
That's a throwback. How does it hold up?
It is so 80s, man.
Yeah.
Like, it really is.
A long film, too.
I watched the uncut version. I don't know the difference. Well, actually, that's not true. I found this interesting website that I bookmarked, and it's called moviecensorship.com. There's a dash between movie and censorship. You go in there, you key in the search bar.
Now, hold on. You've just shared that with me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be up till 2 o'clock this morning now.
Yeah.
Surfing the site. Okay, so I'm assuming that it's kind of like a repository for.
Well, while you were vamping, I pulled it up.
Yes.
And
while I was vamping.
Moviecensorship.com. You type in Dead Pit, right? And so what it does is it says, okay, here we go. There's an R-rated and unrated version of this.
Righto. And I remember that DVD box or video box as well.
It's good.
That's right. And you press a button and it goes.
The eyes lit up. Okay. You see what it does? It starts at 2 minutes, 14 seconds. This is the first cut.
That's a lobotomy they got going on there.
They tell you the length. They describe it. They have screen pics. You see how it's so detailed.
Wow.
At 7 minutes and 1 second, they cut 4 seconds and they show you the shots that they cut out. Here, there's 0.1 second of breasts. 0.1 second? That's a tenth of a second for the record.
That makes a difference to some people.
0.2 seconds. 0.1 second. These trims are so minute.
There's a lot of time spent on those breasts.
But the point that this website has got them cataloged is incredible.
That's horrible right there. Oh.
You're getting hung up on the pictures. The point is, the comparison is made, and sometimes it's 6 seconds you see here, and then other times it's 17, sometimes it's 0.2. But I think cumulatively there's a few minutes difference. But Dead Pit is from 1989, and our lead actress has got the big poofy 80s hair. She's primarily a stunt actress. I forget her name now, but she spends about 70% of her screen time in her underwear. No joke. There's all the key players are here. You've got the doctor we can't trust. We've got the stalking killer with the glowing eyes that randomly shows up.
Let me guess, the young intern who we can trust. Who?
Well, in this case, they swap out. They swap out the intern with another inmate.
Oh, okay.
He's in there. Well, inmate, I say, patient. He's in because he's got a little problem with explosives. He's compulsive with the explosives. He wants to blow stuff up, right? And he's been sentenced to do a couple months in the psych ward. But he's otherwise perfectly normal.
That'll sort of out.
Well, he'll help her through this.
Yeah.
And it turns out those explosive detonation skills come in handy at the end.
Oh.
When they want to blow up a water tower that's going to be blessed by one of the crazy people that walks around doing prayers all day. You know, she's the crazy religious fanatic. Oh, she comes in handy at the end of this plot because she can just bless the water in the water cooler. The gigantic water tower.
Come on, that's kind of a cool idea.
Well, the blessed water tower is going to be demolished to send forth a flow of water to wash over the horde of zombies that have been resurrected.
How does that effect pull off?
You know, the melting effects are really good, I gotta say. Surprisingly good.
Nice.
There's a few times where zombies melts, the main antagonist melts, and they're done quite well. A lot of the gore is actually pretty good here. I'm just going to pull this open again here, Anthony. Here we have a head being dissected.
That's quite something. While the guy's awake, apparently, too.
Well, what we have is a scenario where the film opens, Dead Pit opens, with a number of just cuts between titles and then snippets of violence where we see a doctor at work. He's gone off the reservation and he's got some crazy ideas about surgery in the brain. Anyway, he's put down, this lunatic, and he's left behind in his dead pit and of bodies. And he's sealed up in there. 20 years later, earthquake disrupts the seal, and he emerges with glowing eyes, bullet hole in the forehead still there.
Nice.
And he's going to exact bloody revenge.
Nice.
At a certain point, he's got his hands on a doctor, and he has the head sawed off, and he's fishing around in the brain there,
and creating
emotions.
Emotions, yes.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, for gore, it delivers well, but it is so padded out, man. So many scenes are extended unnecessarily, but it's what you get.
Nice.
The Dead Pit.
Dead Pit, yeah.
It's completely in an insane asylum. That's where it's set.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's keep going through your list here.
Did you happen to watch any of season 2 of American Horror Story?
No, and that crossed my mind today when we were talking about doing the show.
Any interest?
I do, very much so. I really enjoyed the first season, so.
I was lukewarm, but the second one being set in the insane asylum.
Have you seen it?
No, I'm curious.
I've heard very good things about it.
Now we're 3 seasons in.
Yeah.
The Coven season is done.
I know. So we have to catch up, Ted.
I guess. A Clockwork Orange, not much to say there, but it's worth bringing up. Halloween, simply because of his origin. Alone in the Dark is a movie from 1982 I've talked about, and I won't go into a lot of detail now, but it is truly an underappreciated one. There's the cast alone is Jack Palance, Donald Pleasance, Martin Landau, Dwight Schultz.
Wow.
What was he in? What was his name in Star Trek The Next Generation? Oh, Barclay.
Well, never mind that. He was Murdoch in the A-Team.
Yeah, that too. Anyway, the point is that we have Jack Palance as the leader of an escaped crew of insane inmates. And he's going to, lead them. And this is where, go to the archives on the Horroretc website. Search the search bar, and there's an episode where we talked about this, and it was great. It was a good one.
I remember that. Yeah.
Insanitarium from 2008.
I've never seen that one.
Okay. Then let me just focus on Sanitarium for 2013.
All right.
It's recent, only December. It's an anthology, 5 stories. 5 or 3. I didn't make it through. I'm only through the first chapter. The interstitials are hosted by Malcolm McDowell, who now has got both feet firmly in the horror genre for some reason.
Yeah, he does.
And it's accumulation of various tales in the psych ward.
There's another one that decent.
The first one was all right. It was an artist who he designs picture little stop motion figurines.
Okay.
Well, he designs these things until they start to speak to him and give him direction.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm actually going to follow through on it because Robert Englund is in there somewhere. He's credited as being in this, so I'm going to follow through on it. But Sanitarium is new.
Oliver Stone's son, Sean Stone, directed a film, and I'm trying to pull up the name of it here because I actually saw this thing and talked about it on the show not too long ago.
Yeah,
I think it was one of those early Netflix watches when I first got.
I think Stone is in the title somewhere. Maybe not. I don't know. I remember you talking about it and not being terribly impressed with it.
Well, the thing is, what's his face? Oliver Stone himself actually appears in the film.
Right.
And it's funny because I was watching this thing and I had no idea that there was Greystone, that's what it's called. I had no idea that he was any relation. All of a sudden there's this dinner scene at a table and there's Oliver Stone sitting there.
There he is. There's Dad.
Greystone Park. And it says it was inspired by true events, which is really not true. But it fails. It seemed like a poor man's version of Grave Encounters. Sorry, I wanted to shoot that one out there before I forgot about it.
Okay, where was I now on my list here? Oh,
Sanitarium. The Brood. Oh, yeah, of course.
The Brood is kind of a little different in flavor. It's David Cronenberg's 1979 The Brood.
Starring Oliver Reed.
Exactly. And Oliver Reed has got... He's a psychiatrist, but he's got this new kind of theory on treatment. And the David Cronenberg episode, I guess, is where you'd hear us talk about it.
Sure you would, yes.
But it is set in an asylum. Well, no, it's a treatment place. It's different.
A clinic, yeah.
Sure, a clinic is a good word. How about Manhunter / Red Dragon?
Okay, yeah,
where does this fit?
Well, yeah, no, it fits in. I mean, decent films. I gotta say, I do prefer Red Dragon to Manhunter only because we have Anthony Hopkins there. But there are many parts of Manhunter, the Michael Mann film, that I do enjoy. But you know, it's an '80s thriller. There are points that exist within an insane asylum. I would suggest that Silence of the Lambs is actually probably more appropriate.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of these are really what you'd call asylum based.
No, but you're getting to one just I think it's the next one on your list that I'm glad you have on your list because it's probably my second favorite insane asylum film, the sequel to Hellraiser, Hellbound.
Really?
Oh my God, that movie is just terrifying.
It's unique.
It's unique, but I enjoy the experience.
Yeah, it is really out there. And I guess if you're going to apply the concept of craziness and lack of boundaries in the mind to what the reality of the film, it's doing it because
oh, yeah, sure,
it's all over the place.
But it's one hell of a visual experience, you have to admit.
It is indeed. Yeah. Don't Look in the Basement.
Don't Look in the Basement. Okay, again, that's one of those titles that I've been familiar with all my life and I've never seen it.
Oh, man, Don't Look in the Basement is another one that I believe I've talked about. It's on the Video Nasties list. I came across it while I was working through there. You know what happened there? I quit.
Yes, you did. Why'd you quit, Ted?
Quit, Anthony, and I didn't mean to do that. It just happened.
It's a couple of years ago now. I think we probably...
Do I need to get back on that horse or just let...
You got all the time in the world. All the time in the world.
The thing is... they're so bad. Yeah. Most of them are really bad.
I know.
Yeah, it's tough. Anyway, Don't Look in the Basement. It's set in not an asylum. It's almost like a halfway house that is populated with crazy people. And I don't know. Try that search bar. I'm not going to go into it right now, but it's an interesting one. The comment here I have is trying to capitalize on the formula of Last House on the Left. Don't Look in the Basement has some brutal scenes. There's still fun to be had in early 70s hokiness. It's a kind of a house that's beset upon by criminals and, of course, insane, crazy people, potentially violent, crazy, insane people.
Fair enough.
Defending their... Anyway. Asylum Blackout.
Yes, a fairly recent film, which you've talked about on the show.
Yeah. Yep.
Too. It's a title that I keep seeing on Netflix. Is it worth a watch?
I enjoyed it.
See, I prefer the paranormal stuff.
Yeah, this is not paranormal. It is... the question in that film, though, is how much of what you're seeing is real versus what is in the protagonist's mind.
You know, at the best of times, I have no idea how much of my day-to-day existence is real. I have no idea how much of this podcast is real, Ted. I could be sitting here with the cats, podcast. I can't even say it, podcasting right now.
Well, you talk to them, but the question is, do they talk to you?
Sometimes.
High-pitched voice? Or
no.
Female voice?
Well.
Asylum Blackout, but the key is lowered expectations.
Yeah.
I knew nothing going in, and I came out enjoying what I saw. But
good.
Others maybe not so much.
I like those, though. I like that feeling. You go in expecting the worst.
The mild surprise.
Devil's Due, that was it for me so far this year.
Devil's Due.
Went in with lowered expectations. Actually, Paranormal Activity 25, or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
I went in. We both went in with, not expecting much and left feeling that we were surprised.
It was better than the fourth one for sure.
Yeah.
The Ward.
A paranormal activity film set in an asylum. It's bound to happen at some point.
Well,
The Ward.
All roads lead to insane asylums.
The Ward.
Yeah, The Ward.
Dear. This is John Carpenter's journeyman project.
Yes.
Oh boy.
And we've said our piece about it, to be honest. You're never gonna find better looking female insane people in a psych ward. That's for sure.
Unfortunately, you can find much better John Carpenter films.
Yeah, that's the truth of it. But you like Supernatural, and that's what we got here. Just not satisfactory.
Well, no, because they turn into the ghosts. You shouldn't be able to beat up a ghost.
No, that's the problem with the first season of American Horror Story. Too many ghost fistfights.
I had that. How do you think I'd look in that leather suit?
Sucker Punch, I'm going to just move on past both your comment and that movie. Kingdom Hospital. I know you've seen the miniseries.
Yes, I have seen the miniseries.
Yeah.
The original Dutch one, too.
Oh, really? So which is better?
I don't remember.
Okay. Lars von Trier, Stephen King, Kingdom Hospital. I can't comment on it, really, because I haven't seen either.
Asylum from 1972, the Amicus film, yeah. Well, it's another one of those Amicus anthologies.
It's got quite a roster of
Peter Cushing's
players.
in it, Patrick McGee.
Let's see here. We got
Robert
Peter
Powell.
Cushing, Robert Powell, Britt Eklund, Patrick McGee. I think you got him. Herbert Lom.
Yes, that's right, yes.
Yeah, 4 different horror stories, yeah. Yeah, Asylum.
Now, I believe this is the one at the very, very end. The warden of the asylum has a dog. And he's a very, very cruel man. And the residents all kind of turn on him and create this terrible maze of razor blades and things that essentially destroy him. It's wonderful.
Okay.
Led by the blind Patrick McGee. Patrick McGee. I don't know if you know that actor Patrick McGee, but he's
a Doctor Who.
No.
Oh. Come on, it's an 80% chance. If you're talking about a random British actor, he's a Doctor Who character.
No, he was a very, very odd actor, but a very imposing presence, not to be confused with Patrick Macney. He was, I believe he was in that Marat Sade film as well. I think it was him and Ian Richardson, unless I'm mistaken. Anyway, highly recommend any of the Amicus films. So, check out Asylum.
Bedlam, quickly we mentioned it. It's from 1946.
With Boris Karloff.
Right.
A film by Val Lewton.
Yeah, was this one of the Lewtons?
Sure was.
Because I know we did the Lewton episode, but that was a long time ago.
That was definitely one of the Lewton films.
Okay. Patrick, now, again, a lot of these, I'm just going to keep saying, reference the search bar because I know we spent significant time talking about them along the way. Patrick from...
that was our Australian episode.
Yes. Ozploitation. It's from 1978. It's a very simple movie, and it's, it's been accused of being a Carrie ripoff, although, maybe. Patrick is simply, he's institutionalized, and he's comatose, but he sits there, propped up, eyes wide open.
Yeah,
like
that's
pie
creepy.
plates.
That's creepy.
And so he has these telekinetic abilities, and it turns out he might not be as comatose as we think. And it's got a superb final stinger moment that is just like a whoa.
Essentially, you know how that film came about?
Credits.
Somebody's sitting around in Australia, a bunch of guys are sitting around, like, hey, Toby, you've got some wild, crazy eyes right there. We're going to write a horror film around those eyes. You know, I've just lost all of our Australian listeners. I'm so sorry. I apologize. That's the worst Australian accent, and we'll strike that from the record. But
I don't know what's more frightening is the image of the giant pie plate eyes or the unibrow, but either way, Patrick is a frightening presence. Shock Corridor. Do you know this one from 1963? It's like one of the granddaddies of this, where the brother voluntarily enters the hospital, sort of on the trail of finding out the truth behind his mentally disturbed sister, if I'm not mistaken. Mel Brooks, he actually had a satire back in I think it was the early 80s.
High Anxiety, that's right. Yeah, I remember.
High Anxiety, I think was, it was playing on a lot of Hitchcock films, but primarily Vertigo. House on Haunted Hill, you mentioned. Tom Waits, I wanted to bring him up as Renfield in Coppola's Dracula.
Hors d'oeuvres, Dr. Seward, canapes. Yeah, his performance is amazing.
One of the best parts of that movie.
And actually, you know what, Bram Stoker's Dracula, you were very, very right. That is a great example of an asylum film. I'm also going to throw out one of the Frankenstein films that Cushing did. Is it Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell? Is it that last one, Monster from Hell? I think so. Check out the episode I did with Doug about the Hammer Frankenstein films, because in one of them, Victor Frankenstein now runs. He's essentially in charge of an asylum, and he's doing medical experimentation on some of the inmates and all that. And he makes a David Prowse.
When it comes to the image of, like, we talk about tropes, right? And we're running. I'm almost done. I got one more. Cropsy, the documentary.
Oh yeah, I love Cropsy.
Right.
Well, yeah, terrifying documentary.
Essentially, kind of like taking the idea of the individual who comes from the institution background and the legend that kind of forms around him and the misdeeds, the crimes. Cropsy was a really interesting documentary. Not what I thought it was going to be going in. But that's enough of the list.
Well, actually, I'm going to throw it in there. I'm going to throw out two. The Booth brothers did a feature film called Death Tunnel, which Death Tunnel, which is interesting. But they did a fascinating documentary called Spooked, and it's about it's actually about the Death Tunnel in this, which is the tunnel that they would transport bodies on gurneys underneath this old insane asylum. Death Tunnel. No, it was actually a sanatorium for people, I think, with tuberculosis, if I'm correct. But anyway, Spooked is... you remember this documentary.
I remember you talking about it, yeah.
Quite unsettling. But Death Tunnel was...
You know, okay, the reason why I'm going to quit on the list is because you could continue on and on, but it's relatively fruitless because the point is you can't cover them all. There's too many. There's some really good ones. There's some gems. But when we mentioned Renfield there in Coppola's Dracula, he did actually, with Seward, kind of capture what I consider to be maybe it's a trope, I don't know, maybe it's a stereotype, but I always envision this. If we're going to go back into the 1800s and we're going to talk about insane asylums and the madness, these people screaming out and baying out into the night, caged like animals or shackled to the wall, and they're in their dirty white straitjackets with the dangling sleeves. And I always envision the doctor who is sat there disheveled, unshaven.
Yes.
He's got the half glass of whiskey.
He's injecting himself with
he's injecting
morphine,
himself with one thing or another, typically morphine, and he's scribbling out on some parchment with his ink dip. And I just picture this as another element of the insane asylum.
That's right. All insane asylum physicians resemble Richard E. Grant.
The corrupt doctor. Oh boy. There was one more film, that I wanted to mention.
Okay.
Not one I've seen. While we were sort of talking about doing this as a subject, God, I can't remember where I came across this. It was some reference to a Werner Herzog film from 1970 called Even Dwarfs Started Small.
Okay.
The basic description, it's German, reads as such. The inhabitants of an institution in a remote country rebel against their keepers. Their acts of rebellion are by turns humorous, boring, and alarming. An allegory on the problematic nature of fully liberating the human spirit as both commendable and disturbing elements of our nature come forward. The film shows how justifiable revolt may be empowering, but may also turn into chaos and depravity. The allegory is developed in part by the fact the film is cast entirely with dwarfs.
What?
So Werner Herzog in 1970 made this film about basically the inmates of an institution rising up, and the entire cast is dwarfs. And I have read snippets about some of the things that take place in this film. It's not just the subject matter that's alarming. It's the fact that it's Werner Herzog, who is the most cold, calculated director I can think of, where he's so... he just stands back. He's so critical of humanity, I think.
He is, yeah.
I just get that vibe, And he wants to expose, or he wants to demonstrate the depravity.
Well, we know how he found Klaus Kinski, at least.
So, if he had a working relationship with that dude...
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm very curious about Even Dwarfs Started Small. Of course, Crispin Glover tried ripping off the concept, right, where he cast his film using Down syndrome cast. And it's like, you're not... Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, about a decade ago or so.
Oh, dear.
And it's like, I don't think that you're that kind of an artist, Crispin Glover. It feels like exploitation to me. I think that if anybody could do it, Herzog might be.
If anyone could do it, it would be Werner Herzog.
Exactly.
He stands back with that very droll delivery.
Yeah. Anyway, that's... You know what? Movies set in insane asylums, man.
I'm glad we did this, actually. It was interesting and probably going to fuel my evening with nightmares. So, you're right, Ted. We had to stop the list there because we could have probably rambled on for another 15 minutes, just dropping titles that crossed our mind. Folks, I don't know about you, but I'm always on the lookout for a good asylum film.
Mm-hmm.
I find the setting fascinating, and we really do have to revisit this idea at some point, and maybe in the near future, and maybe see if we can do some recording down at the old asylum here, because I think that'd be cool. Take some pictures and get it up so people are kind of there with us. Maybe camp out and do a midnight show.
I'm gonna have to go there ahead of time and set up the location a little bit.
Yeah.
Set up some fishing line.
Oh, yeah.
Set up my various practical pranks so that when you're there, I can pull them off and watch you shit your pants, because I know it'll be effective.
Something went horribly wrong. Ever seen The Burning? When practical jokes go wrong. Okay, well, listen. Why don't we wrap up this segment?
Sounds good.
And we could just have a bit of a recap of recent watches.
Let's shoot the shit fuckers.
Well, as mentioned earlier, before the old Blu-ray player cacked itself, I watched the restored release of Dracula Prince of Darkness, the Hammer film, Christopher Lee's second portrayal as Dracula, 1965 film. 65, 66, one of the two, someone will correct me. 65, because it was 7 years after they did Horror of Dracula. So this is a film that I've talked about on the podcast many times, and, for the most part, I've said that I'm not a big fan of this film. For one reason, and I don't want to talk too much about it, because Doug and I are going to do a show about the Hammer Draculas in the very near future. What I didn't like about this film, the infamous story, is that Christopher Lee was given the script. He was persuaded to come back to do the role of Dracula after 7 years, and he read the script and said, these lines, this dialogue, this is not Stoker's Dracula. I refuse to deliver these lines. So he was contractually obliged to appear in the film. What did they do? They cut his lines. So he actually spends his whole time on screen, in the frame, silent. Or he growls or he hisses, but he doesn't actually deliver any dialogue. So I've never been a big fan of this film because it feels curious on account of that alone. But the restoration is marvelous, and it actually just looks beautiful. Vivid use of reds, especially, were quite striking. And this is one of those moments where I realized, wow, Blu-ray really does have value and merit over DVD. It was wonderful to watch it, and eventually I'll be able to check out the special features. But until that moment, until that time comes, I was glad that I was able to revisit this film and have a new appreciation for it as a film, as a work of art. But I don't want to get into it too much, because I do want to cover this when I do the show with Doug in a couple of weeks' time. So I'll hand this over to you and your recent 80s robot remake watch. I can't talk tonight. 80s robot
it's late.
remake watch.
The one question though before I go there is, so he's silent, no dialogue from Christopher Lee.
Yes.
So I don't know how much screen time he has.
A fair amount.
So fair amount. Does it ever transition into awkwardness?
No.
Where he's standing there in position for an abnormally long time without speak. Why is he not speaking? Like, why is he just staring into the camera?
They use Dracula as a
he's a stalking presence.
Stalking presence. He's kind of like the Mummy.
All right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It works.
Well,
it does work surprisingly.
Okay, so I saw RoboCop. Of course, I saw RoboCop. There was never any doubt.
No, that's one of your favorites, Ted. RoboCop.
I love that original film, though. But it's there's 80s nostalgia, and then this is a really well-made classic film.
Right.
They're different things. The rose-colored glasses can be removed, and you can still appreciate that a movie was very successful in what it was trying to do. RoboCop, the original, was successful. It was a satire. The title was a ridiculous title. It knew it was a ridiculous title. It had a lot of things to say and a lot of things to comment on, and it did all of those things successfully. In 2014, we're utilizing the brand name, of course.
Yes.
We've got a couple dropped lines to pay homage to the original.
Okay.
But the depth is not there at all. This is not satire.
It's a shame.
It has no social commentary. It's got clumsy social commentary. Opens up, it's kind of bookended with Samuel L. Jackson as, your prototypical Fox News right-wing talking head loudmouth.
Glenn Beck.
Yeah. And the things that he's saying, this is kind of tough because, how do I describe this? It's like, what you see him doing is like, okay, I get that you are being the right-wing Republican extremist. I see that. I can see what you're referencing here as a film, but what is your commentary? What are you saying with this? You're not making a point, really. That automated drone technology has the potential to enslave us all. Not really deep. You're not deep enough for that to be some kind of satirical commentary or anything of value. It's all very surface level. It's PG-13, meaning a lot of the excessive violence has been stripped away.
That's too bad.
Again, it's not a situation where Paul Verhoeven was ramping up the violence, for the gorehounds. He was doing it as a contextual kind of demonstration of the extremities of society. How extreme violence produces an extreme response. And he's just having fun with the whole affair. Here, the entire thing feels very neuter to me. It felt directionless. It was like, we want to follow this kind of main idea of this good cop that is critically wounded and can be actually incorporated into a mechanical suit to be a RoboCop. But why are we doing it? We have Michael Keaton, maybe the highlight of this movie. But Michael Keaton plays, the main corporate bad guy, right? Raymond Sellers, head of Omnicorp. Having Detroit as the broken down, rotted backdrop of the original film, really, it really felt like it was a complete degradation of what was once great about America, and now it's been reduced to this, right? But yet we have this one figure that can come in and can clean the streets and make it safe once again and all this. Well, they've kind of moved out of Detroit in the new one. Now they're in foreign locales. And now when Michael Keaton looks out of his high-rise window of his office over the nights, over the lit city of the night, why, it's a burgeoning metropolis. And that rot is gone. I'm not really describing my problems with the film, really. It was boring. That's crime number one. That's unforgivable, to be boring when your title is RoboCop.
That's too bad, yeah.
The action was very underwhelming. There was about three and a half action sequences. The opening sequence is taking place in Tehran, where we have robotic, very much like District 9, those types of robots patrolling the streets. Everywhere else in the world, we have drone technology that are enforcing the rule of law, but no drones are allowed on the soil of the United States of America. We have this act that's been put into place that prevents it. Of course, Omnicorp would like to have that act repealed.
Yes, I'm sure they would.
Anyway, the first sequence takes place in Tehran. There's a little bit of gunplay there. We have a training montage sequence, which we see it in the trailer, where there's like 500 droids and they're all kind of like focused in on RoboCop.
Yes.
Then we have a scene that takes place in a warehouse. It's like the warehouse shoot-up sequence. It's done in the dark.
Oh.
And then finally we have this, like the climactic battle against the Ed 209s. Yeah, more than one, by the way.
Oh.
And it's so hectic and shaky that you can't make sense of what's going on. So the action, underwhelming at best. The main guy, Joel Kinnaman, who plays our Alex Murphy, is the most bland lead actor they could have found.
Oh, that's too bad.
It's awful. Yeah, and here's what I didn't like as well. Not just that he was boring, but they don't damage his face at all. So, in the original, going back, and I hate to do the compare and contrast, but it's just so...
Well, no, but it's a very important part of our culture.
It really is, like, it's too on the money to not call it a direct remake, and yet the places they chose to go differently were bad decisions, in my opinion. When Peter Weller was RoboCop. He had the helmet and the visor on.
Yes.
90% of the time.
That's right.
It wasn't until the final kind of act of the movie where it came off, and when it did, he was grotesque.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Like the skin was all pulled, and he had like where it was melded to the metal.
So we don't have that in this film?
He looks just fine.
Oh,
and also,
come on.
Every excuse, it's the Iron Man syndrome. Every excuse to have the visor lift up. And Amazing Spider-Man, too. Really, any superhero movie where there's a mask involved, first
Any
chance we
excuse,
can get
yeah.
to get the mask off because we want to see the actor's face.
Oh, that's too bad.
The visor's up most of the time. And through most of this running time of the movie, he is just full personality. Talking, interacting, like not robotic at all. It's not until at a certain point where they artificially reduce his dopamine levels that he flatlines into RoboCop, and he just mechanically trudges forward to fight crime.
Oh, come on. Really?
Yeah, it's not until the very, very end that happens. Most of the time, he's just Joel Kinnaman.
Oh, dear.
Hey, what up?
Hey, what up?
There's a really cool scene, though, I did like, where, I mean, the names in this movie, Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman, yeah. Samuel
good actor.
Jackson.
Slumming it, though. Slumming it. He's the guy that, he's the genius scientist that can fuse him with the android body. Well, when he reveals to RoboCop the ugly truth of what he is, there's a neat moment where he presses a button and all the parts like come away. Like the arms separate and are pulled away. Like the legs separate and they go away. And he's like staring at himself in a mirror, right? Wow. He's watching this happen. And then the torso and it goes away. And everything just keeps coming off until he's left with his head. Top of his head is exposed. You see his brain. And then his throat has actually been... There's a tube where you see the throat actually functioning and working.
Messed up.
And the lungs in these like glass bulbs. You see in clear. You see the lungs pumping up and down.
That's messed up.
He's like, that's all that's left of me. Yup. That was cool. I like that a lot, actually. That was really
That's
good.
messed up.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That would bother me.
He's like, I don't want to see myself like this. No kidding. Can you imagine? Talk about nightmare fuel. There you have it. Anyway, the cast all across the board pretty much bland. It's a real damn shame.
That's too bad.
Omar from The Wire is Lewis, the partner, who's barely in it anymore. They do really try to incorporate the family, like the wife and the son and all this nonsense where, I don't know if you recall, but in RoboCop, the original film, this doesn't happen. We don't have Peter Sellers in the family. It's a dream sequence.
Peter Sellers? I'd love to see that. Hello, I'm RoboCop. And you received a bump upon the head, and now I'm going to kill you. I apologize. I seem to have knocked you into this vat of nuclear waste.
You won't let me get away with that one. Peter Weller does not have this interaction. It's a dream sequence in the original film. A nightmare, really. Here, we've got him coming home. Coming home to spend time with the fam.
Oh, eek.
The son's checking out his cool new robot suit.
No, that doesn't make sense to me. That's not my RoboCop.
Yeah, it didn't really have anything new to bring to... It had no commentary at all. And even the references were lame. Like, I'd buy that for $1, is well known. Yeah. In this situation, they're doing a training session. He fails horribly because a robot and a human brain don't react the same speed. The human brain will always hesitate slightly, right?
Right.
That's the problem. So when he fails this training thing, the guy turns to the doctor and says, I wouldn't buy that for $1. Oh, that's good. Real good. Somebody patted themselves on the back for coming up with that, Anthony. You know they did.
Yeah, of course they did.
Anyway, I was very underwhelmed. I knew I would be. RoboCop 2014 is PG-13 across the board, baby.
Folks... Listen, we've actually had one of the better conversations that we've had on this program in quite some time. Well, I shouldn't say quite some time, but a couple of weeks anyway. We had the Skype show, and I caught up with with Brent and Barry. We did a show in between, but I'm actually quite pleased that we sat down and we decided to talk a little bit about asylums, some movies, and also a little bit of history in there too. Ted, thank you for the history lesson. Apologies for the rant. I'm still kind of livid, but hopefully the new product is going to lighten my spirits. Yeah, hey, this was a cool episode. I'm glad that we got to this subject. And like I said, we are going to I can never get out of a show anymore, can I?
No, you can't.
Wow, look at this.
Anthony, I know and I wouldn't do this.
Yes.
But we have a prize to give away.
Oh my God! What the hell am I thinking?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
So
okay, so folks, here's the deal. You know that we put this premium episode up recently about demons, elements of the elemental evils, which is available on Bandcamp. Check it out through our website if you haven't already done so. We really appreciate. Thank you very much to the people who have taken the time and dropped the $1 or what have you to give it a listen. It helps out here. It's just something that we're trying right now, and the response has been very positive. What we also did, however, is we decided, well, if people are going to get involved and they're going to do this, we should also offer an additional incentive, which is a prize. So for every $1 that somebody has spent in downloading the Demons episode, for every $1, we've actually put your name into a ballot. Actually, it's an electronic ballot per se. It's
an Excel spreadsheet is what it is.
Yeah, but we have a randomizing formula. I don't know how the hell you set this up, but this is your baby.
That's what I do instead of working.
Yeah, so there is a randomized draw, and I believe that you have run this earlier today. So we do have a winner of what's the prize?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
it's Never Sleep Again, the 2-disc Blu-ray.
Yes.
Documentary to end all horror documentaries.
Donated to us by Andrew Cash, one of the filmmakers.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not sure. It was sent to us because we want to promote the fact that it's got its Blu-ray release just this month.
It's amazing. It is the definitive behind-the-scenes look at the Nightmare on Elm Street series. And although this thing would look fantastic on one of our shelves, we thought, well, you know what? It was donated to the podcast. Why don't we give it out to somebody who took the step and got that episode?
I made it through 6 hours of the 10 hours
amazing
material.
Amazing.
Every head that you can think of is talking in this thing. That's crazy,
awesome.
man.
That's awesome.
The notable exceptions are the ones you can understand. I mean, the Johnny Depps are not there. Lawrence Fishburne should have maybe called in or something. Come on. But anyway, it's fantastic. It's really good. It's as comprehensive as you can possibly ask for. And we're going to ship it to Anthony. It's going to go out to Dan R.
Dan R.
Congratulations. We got your email, Dan. We'll fire it off and we'll get in touch and we'll get that to you. Thank you to everybody.
Very much.
Really.
Thank you to everybody who has contributed. Again, we're going to do it again. Another premium episode in the very near future.
Very near future?
I think we're near enough in the next
We'll do
while.
another. We'll do another.
Yeah, we absolutely will. But listen, forget the premium episodes because we are still doing the show a week, or we're doing our best. We're on a pretty good roll right now, maintaining the regular schedule of horror, etc. And we thank you for being patient. I know our release days have been a little wonky as of late, but hey, listen, we are happy to keep on sharing of the time and interacting with you, our friends around the world. And the best way to interact with you, of course, is to either get through some of the email that you've sent us, horroretc@gmail.com. That's horror etc. The message board on the website, it seems to be enjoying a bit of a renaissance. So check out our website if you don't already. And that is horroretc.com.
It's time to get out of here.
It is. It almost is. But we're not getting out of here, Ted, until you give us that voicemail number.
It's 206-337-5324. Drop us a line. We've promised and threatened a voicemail show, and I think it's getting close to that time. Nicole Cushing, thanks for the calls. Nicole calls us almost weekly, Anthony. And
Nicole is cool.
They're piling up, and I feel bad because people contribute and we don't get the voicemail shows out. We're gonna.
Very, very soon. And if this episode hasn't driven you batty, hasn't pushed you around the bend, hasn't made you fit for bedlam, then we're just going to keep trying. Same time, same place, next week, you know where, horror, etc.